You are standing in the middle of Thebes, and it is noon. It's 1350 BCE. The air is around 43 degrees. There's no air conditioning. There's no ice. Not in this city. Not in this kingdom. Not anywhere on Earth, because nobody works out how to make cold on purpose for another 3,000 years. You're on bare sand, wearing a linen wrap and nothing else. And in a minute, you're going to do several hours of hard labor. And you're fine. Not fine as in quietly falling apart. Fine as in this is Tuesday. Fine as in nobody here thinks today is worth mentioning. When we think about ancient Egypt, we think about objects, pyramids, gold, a coffin lid behind glass in London. What we never picture is the dull, permanent engineering problem underneath all of it. Because before you build anything, you have to answer this. How do you keep millions of people alive and working in one of the hottest inhabited places on Earth for 3,000 years with no electricity? Stacking rocks into a triangle is time and manpower. Keeping the manpower breathing long enough to finish is the hard part. So, the walls, the wind, the linen, the beer, the salt, and the desert itself. And the real reason isn't toughness. Every fix in this video still works. We mostly just stopped using them. Come on. The mistake is sitting inside the question. We picture Egyptians enduring the heat, holding the desert off by willpower, like the sun was something you out-toughed. That's wrong. And it's wrong in an interesting direction. They weren't fighting it. The shape of the houses, the cloth, what they drank, where they slept, all of it had been quietly tuned over dozens of generations around exactly one problem. Nobody designed it. It accumulated until the result looks like it came out of an engineering department. They made peace with the sun, then read the small print very carefully. You are, functionally, a machine for evaporating water. Your body has one serious way to shed heat, and it runs on liquid. Your core creeps up, you push water through your skin, it evaporates, and it takes heat with it. That's the whole mechanism. There's no backup. Other animals improvise. Dogs pant, pigs roll in mud because they barely sweat at all. You have between 2 and 4 million sweat glands, more than 10 times a chimpanzee's, and pound for pound, we're the best on the planet at this. The problem is it runs on a consumable. You're cooling yourself by spending water, several liters a day out there. Lose more than about 2% of your body mass in fluid, and it shows. Attention slips, coordination slips, decisions get worse. Heat takes your judgment well before it takes your legs. And there's a second consumable everyone forgets. Sweat is salty. Work long enough and you can drink all the water you like and still go down because you've flushed out the sodium your nerves run on. So it collapses to 3 terms. Take less heat on, put the water back, put the salt back. Everything from here is 5 answers to those 3. Egyptian houses were mud brick, Nile silt cut with straw, baked hard by the very sun the wall was built to defeat. And mud brick has enormous thermal mass. A thick wall doesn't block heat, it delays it. Sun loads the outside all day, and the heat crawls through slowly, so the full weight of the afternoon reaches you around midnight when the desert has gone cold and you actually want it. Then the night's chill makes the same crossing and arrives at midday when you're desperate for it. The wall doesn't keep temperature out. It puts every temperature where it's useful instead of where it happened. Nobody was writing equations about thermal lag. They noticed thick walls made the house better and built thick for 3,000 years. Then they stacked more on top. Windows small and set high, because hot air rises and you want the exit at the top. Walls whitewashed. Streets narrow, so the buildings shaded each other. And flat roofs, which makes a roof furniture. In the hot months, people carried the bed up there, where the air moved and heat radiated into an empty sky. Sleeping on the roof in an Egyptian summer isn't hardship, it's the good room. Egyptian houses used a malqaf, a hooded scoop on the roof, angled at the prevailing wind, which in Egypt comes reliably out of the north. Wind hits the hood, funnels down a shaft, and drops into the room below, while the hot air already in there rises and escapes through those high windows. You've made a pressure difference. You've built a chimney that runs sideways. Straight about the evidence. No pharaonic wind catcher survives. What we have is a picture, a house painted in the Theban tomb of Nebamun around 1350 BCE, showing a rooftop structure that is unmistakably a wind scoop. Then they went further, which is the part that gets me. Some households stood porous clay water jars directly in the path of that incoming air. Water seeps through the clay and evaporates off the outside, and evaporation takes heat with it. So the air arriving in your room has been cooled on the way in. That's an evaporative cooler, the same machine you can buy today and plug into a wall, built out of a pot and a gap in the ceiling. And it didn't die with Egypt. Wind catchers spread east into the great towers of Yazd, some still standing and still moving air. Your instinct in serious heat is to wear as little as possible. The Egyptian answer was more interesting. Egyptian clothing was linen, made from flax, and the properties line up perfectly with the problem. It breathes. The fibers are hollow, so air moves through the weave. It wicks, pulling sweat off the skin and spreading it wide where it evaporates. And it's a poor insulator, so it doesn't hold the heat you're shedding. Cotton keeps moisture against you. Wool insulates. Linen does neither. There's also a quality gradient that tells you everything about the society. The finest cloth was woven so fine that surviving fragments are nearly see-through. That's what the elite wore. Field workers wore coarse, heavy linen, or not much at all. Same sun, same fiber, completely different experience of both. And then the counterintuitive bit. Loose pale cloth can leave you cooler than bare skin because it blocks direct sunlight while still letting sweat evaporate. You lose a little airflow and gain a lot of shade. The same arithmetic that pushed desert peoples across North Africa and Arabia onto flowing robes. Being naked in desert sun isn't liberation, it's a faster burn. You need several liters of water a day. The Nile is right there, and the Nile is carrying silt, waste, and parasites. That isn't speculation. Schistosomiasis, which cycles through freshwater snails, has been found directly in Egyptian mummies. Its DNA recovered from the liver of one roughly 3,900 years old. So, Egyptians drank beer, not casually, structurally, at civilization scale. And this wasn't a pint. Egyptian beer was thick, low in alcohol, and substantial enough that some descriptions land closer to a gruel than a drink. Food, hydration, and calories at once. Brewing involved heating the mash, and fermentation creates conditions a lot of pathogens don't survive, so the beer was safer than the river it came from. How structural was it? At Deir el-Medina, the standard wage was rations of grain, emmer for bread, barley for beer. In year 29 of Ramesses III, around 1157 BCE, the rations arrived late. The workers put their tools down, walked out, said plainly that they were hungry, and staged a sit-in. It's recorded in the Turin Strike papyrus, and it's generally considered the first labor strike in human history. In that climate, the ration wasn't a bonus. It was the cooling system. Delay the beer, and you haven't been mean with the payroll. You've switched off the water supply for men doing heavy labor in a desert. Water replaced. Salt not replaced, and salt is what stops muscles and judgment going soft. By mid-afternoon, the Egyptian diet handled it by accident. Bread was the staple, gritty enough that it visibly ground down the population's teeth, which we still see as worn molars in mummies. Salted dried fish was common, onions, figs, and dates. Dates being an efficient parcel of sugar and potassium. Nobody was thinking about sodium ions. But salted fish, salty bread, and potassium-rich fruit, drunk alongside enormous volumes of weak beer, produces almost exactly the balance heavy labor in extreme heat requires. That's the pattern here. Not knowledge, iteration. Right, here's where it turns over. We've spent this video treating the desert as the enemy, but ancient Egypt existed because of it. They had two names for their own country. The black soil of the floodplain was Kemet, the black land. The desert was Deshret, the red land. Two worlds, and a border so sharp you could stand with a foot in each. And the red land was a wall. It's why Egypt held one identity for 3,000 years while Mesopotamia was conquered and reconquered on what looks like a rotating schedule. Egypt was flanked east and west by hundreds of kilometers of waterless sand. Armies can't cross that. It was a moat nobody had to dig, maintain, or garrison. And the dryness is why we know anything about Egypt at all. Papyrus, linen, wood, human tissue, all of it rots in damp and survives in dry. Every scroll in every museum exists because the climate that made living difficult made decay nearly impossible. Mummification comes straight out of that. Bodies buried in hot, dry sand dried out and lasted. And embalming reproduces artificially what the desert was doing for free. So the heat didn't just get survived, it got recruited. Here's the picture I can't put down. A house in Egypt, 3,500 years ago. Thick mud walls holding yesterday's cool. A scoop on the roof pulling the north wind into the rooms. A porous jar in that airflow. Sweating, taking heat out of the breeze as it passes. A family asleep on the roof under an empty sky. Not one part of that needs electricity. It has no off switch because it never had an on switch. And that's the real reason. Not toughness. The desert kills determined people at the same rate as everyone else. They stopped treating heat as an opponent and started treating it as a fixed condition to design around. Every solution here is passive, running on physics that never stops. Heat crawls through thick material, wind goes where the pressure drops, water takes heat with it when it evaporates. None of it can be switched off, priced up, or broken. We went the other way. A machine in the window, cooling one room at a time, dumping its waste heat into the street and making the city hotter. 3,000 years in one of the hottest places people have ever chosen to live. And the answer was never strength. It was mud, cloth, shade, salt, and paying very close attention. So, could you do it? A summer in ancient Thebes. No fridge, no fan, the roof for a bedroom, a jar of warm beer for breakfast. Tell me in the comments, and be honest. If you got something out of this, hit like. It decides whether anyone else sees it. And subscribe. This channel is all the parts of the ancient world that never make it into the textbooks. There's another one on screen now.